What is going on, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you are listening to this podcast? Welcome back. We are back for a third season. Season 2 got cut a little short. Things in my life got a little interesting and things changed up, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But we are back for season 3 of For the Love of Humankind, and as always, I am the host, Jeff. Uh, it's been a wild ride, and obviously, I have a new background behind me. No longer am I living on a college campus. Um, and to be honest, I may not even be living here for that much longer. Um, and I'll talk, I guess, a little bit about that. I don't really know. My life is just all up in the air at the moment, and that kind of brings me to what I want to talk about in this first episode back. And I think I've probably talked about this before a little bit in another episode in the podcast, but. Really my focal point this week is just talking about resiliency and talking about the human experience and talking about like our own mental struggles and working through our own battles and demons that we have, because like I said, it's been a whirlwind. I think the last time that I uploaded a podcast episode, I think was either back in May or June of this year. So it's definitely been some time. It's probably been about 3 or 4 months. And that episode was a huge focal point on when the Supreme Court decided to overturn Roe v. Wade. So we had that episode. Obviously, there's a lot of different things still happening in the world at the moment, and we'll come back to talking about those topics, in this podcast. And this season is really going to be, I think, really coming back to the human experience. I think I definitely veered away a little bit from that. But I think that the whole point of this podcast for me was to be able to focus on the human experience, the human story, and what is it that we are experiencing in our everyday lives. And obviously, there are a lot of things that contribute to that. But I think it's important for me to examine my own self. And I talk a lot on this podcast and have talked previously on this podcast about ways people can do this or do that, but to be honest, didn't always necessarily follow suit with that. I think that that's something that I am working on, and I think that that's something that I really need to just listen to myself sometimes. And I think that has become, honestly, a struggle at points, and it becomes difficult because I think when you can't necessarily trust yourself or trust your own judgment is when you kind of begin to lose yourself, and you begin to kind of, I don't know the phrase that I want to use, but like you don't begin to like recognize who you are anymore. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now in my life, in all honesty. And I will say that this past week has been probably one of, if not the toughest week of my life. And so I will, before I get into that, I'll backtrack a little bit because, like I said, the last time I was in a brand new place, or I was in a different place for every single episode before this, when I lived on campus. And so I moved off of campus in July of this year. So we're approaching October. So it's been about 3 months. But I moved off because I had found a new job that wasn't in higher education. I was working in human resources. I was making a lot more money, being able to sustain myself a lot better. Um, and I enjoyed it. I started that job in the beginning of June. Officially left my job in higher education at the end of June, so there was some overlap with the two positions. Um, and going into this brand new world of HR and especially in the world of construction and HR is what I was doing. I just felt out of place. Like I would receive projects and I would continue to have to ask questions or like phrases would be used and I'd be like, can you explain what that means to me? I don't really know. And so it was tough. It was a tough transition. The really nice part was that I really got to for the first time and probably most of my life, or at least the last 7 years professionally working, really prioritize myself and my own life and the things that I got to do because I got to work 7:30 to 3:30 every day, come home, you know, take my dog out, go to the gym, come back, and really I had the whole night to do whatever, and like honestly, like that is huge, and that was huge, and um, I'm very thankful that I was able to do that, um, because I have, since the that time of starting that new job, like I have really put a larger focus on my health, um, a larger focus on being healthy, going to the gym, eating right, and honestly over the last 55 days I think is what it is, like I've lost just over 20 pounds, so I'm feeling lighter, I'm feeling better, like I am feeling more confidence. And obviously like we've had an episode where we've talked about body image and we've talked about body confidence and we've talked about what that looks like, um, and in all honesty it's still something that I struggle with. And like I want to continue to lose the weight because I think have other health issues that are caused by the weight that I have and the weight that I weigh. That's such a tongue twister to say, um, and so that's something that I've been doing, and it's been helping me a lot. Um, and obviously, I had a relationship. I think I had talked about that in my previous podcast. Maybe not, but I was in a very good relationship. And so this past week, so actually I should say the week before this because this is coming out on Saturday. Um, is that I got sick at the beginning of the week. I had lost my voice completely. My mouth was like tasting really chalky. Um, I had left work early on the Monday to come work from home. Um, Tuesday, I still wasn't feeling great, and I had texted my supervisor, and I was like, "Hey, like, I'm still not feeling great." And she's like, "Okay, well, you can either use your PTO or work from home. Um, there's no reason for you to come into the office to get other people sick." And I was like, "Great," because I already work from home 2 days a week. And so I was like, okay, like this is typical, whatever. Wednesday comes and this is when things start to like I think really just hit the fan, for that week. So pretty much that day at work, I was asked to start completing a daily log of the work that I was doing, um, which makes sense and doesn't because like I do my work and I get it done and submitted and on time, and I'm often commended for being quick with my work and being like providing quality work. And so I was like, okay, like, yeah, I can do this. And so a lot of my work was like recruiting and headhunting and reaching out to people. And I had reached out to like 80 people that day, had sent that in, had done some interviews that day, and then the next day, Thursday and Friday, like I said, I typically work from home anyway. So working from home, I get up, do my normal routine, get a calendar invite for 10 minutes before a meeting that basically says follow up. And I was like, okay, just probably gonna talk about progress, but like in my gut, like I had this just like the sinking feeling that like something was wrong. Like sometimes you just get that gut feeling. And this was unfortunately one of those times. So I was called in that meeting and was told that it wasn't working out. That is the reason that I was given. And I was let go. I was told to turn in my computer and my phone. And it's like, great, this is lovely. Um, this is just perfect because I had left, a job that I could have stayed at, that provided housing. Obviously, it wouldn't have been preferable. My mental health was very impacted by that position, and so like I'm glad that I left. I was able to get ahead on some debt and some things like that. But to just like lose that way, I think is what threw me for a loop. And then that night, the person that I was in a relationship with, it was complicated already at that point in our relationship, but I still wouldn't want and didn't want any to be with anybody else. And that day was super stressful. Like I had been obviously been sick that week. Like I had just been let go. I had asked the individual to come over. They had an event that was just around the corner, and they said, "Yeah, I'll come stop by right after." And then they didn't, and because of the heightened emotions of that week, like I was not very very nice, and I was hurt because this person said that they were there for me, and would be there for me. Um, and it sucks when they are your go-to person every day. Um, Next day comes, it's first day of unemployment. I'm already looking for jobs. Like I applied for probably like 30 or 40 jobs on that Friday alone. Um, and then that evening, got into another argument, which just kind of really just concluded um, the relationship as a whole, which sucks because like I did see a future with this person. Um, Honestly, like I don't have any ill will. I don't have any bad blood towards them. Like I get it. Um, it just was such a culmination of everything that took place that week that made it really hard. And then late Friday evening, early Saturday morning, I was having some super severe ankle and foot pain. Couldn't sleep, so went to the ER and basically sat there for 3.5 hours, 3.5, 4 hours, and essentially was told, well, we don't really know what's wrong. It kind of looks like tendonitis. It might be gout, but we can't do blood work here. And I'm just like at this point, like, what good is an ER? Like, if they can't do those tests, and like, it just everything culminated, and so I finally was able to come back and get some sleep after the ER on Saturday, and when I woke up, like honestly, my day was pretty much full of just like laying on my bed crying. Like I was just at a point where I just couldn't keep up with everything that was going on. Like I collapsed. Like I just felt like this was it. This was like I just didn't have anything. Like now I'm not gonna sit here and say like I still not in a complete great spot. Maybe when this episode is actually released, um, I'll be in a better spot. But um, at the point of recording this, like I'm still not necessarily in a great spot, and so I was struggling a lot. And over the last few days, like I just truly have never felt more alone. Um, and if you've ever felt that, like I am so sorry that you've had to feel that. Like it is not a good feeling. Um, there's just so many and like factors that contributed to all of the emotions that I was feeling and everything that was happening and with that relationship, and like it just felt like everything that I had going good for my life just vanished. Like it was just gone within 72, like 48 to 72 hours. And um it's been really hard. And like really, I think for me the thing that I am trying to focus on is like what's next. Like what does this mean for me? Like how does this define me? How do I move forward with this? um and honestly, like I'm don't have a complete answer for that, to be honest. And I know when a lot of people are struggling, like they don't always have an answer. um One of the things that I've actually been very grateful for is having friends that have been like, okay, like what do you, what's next? Like what are you doing now? Like how are you processing? How are you working through this? How are you thinking about like what is good in your life? How are you thinking about like what you're going to do next? And like continually re-engaging me in those conversations, I think has truly helped. um, Again, I don't always have answers, and sometimes I'm stubborn and don't want to respond, and just I don't know, like I don't really want to think about this right now. Like my mom has asked me multiple times, like, hey, you want to talk about this? You want to? I'm like, I really don't have that capacity to talk about it at the moment, and that's okay. um, I think it is okay to understand yourself, and it is okay to understand um, and give space to what you are feeling and what you are going through. Um, One of the big things for me right now is really just trying to figure out and process, and I honestly need to do a better job with this because I haven't. Um, but I really, for me, like writing down what I'm feeling, and writing down like essentially almost like a flow chart to what's next. Uh, Typically helps me in situations like this. Again, I have not been in this low of a situation, I don't think, in my life. Um, but again, I say that, and I'm trying to figure out how do I move forward and get to another point. Um, One of the things that is on my list to potentially do, and I don't think that I have had the luxury at any other point in my life, to just like pack up my shit and leave and go somewhere else and just start new. Like that is something that is very high on my list to do at the moment. Like I am very highly considering just packing my stuff, and my dog, and moving to Florida, because I know that at least in Florida, like for me, it's basically a second home, because I went there so much growing up, and I know the area, and I've already lived there before, doing the Disney college program, and so for me, like that's one of the things that's at the top of my list is just packing things up and moving. And like I think for me, like how do I get to like why did this happen? That's what I'm asking myself. And I think, when we're trying to figure out our next steps and how do we overcome, pain, and how do we overcome failure, and how do we overcome, you know, terrible life circumstances, like, why did this happen? And, I'm not asking that to the universe, but like in myself, like, why did this happen? Like, is this giving me an opportunity to do this or to do this? Maybe I wasn't super passionate about what I was doing, and that was, perhaps the universe telling me, hey, like, no, let's do this. This is your time. And so one of the things that is, a key factor in all of this and in life, unfortunately, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, is finances. And figuring out where that lies, and what you're able to do. I'm fortunate enough to have been able to move off a college campus and move into an apartment, and so on and so forth. But I was so focused on getting out of debt rather than saving that kind of fucked me in the I don't even want to say long term, because it hasn't even been long term. Like, in the short term, I guess. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where where my life has just kind of, gone down a really slippery slope. And hopefully, like, I get to a point where it takes off here shortly. But one of the things that I'm working through is what's next. And like, some of us can move on and process super quickly. And like, I know for myself that I am somebody that holds on to things, and I am somebody that is not willing to give up things very easily, which prolongs any sort of moving on or healing process, which sucks. Especially when other people can do that so easily. But I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I think being emotionally mature and being able to give time to where you're at and how you're feeling is good. And so I mentioned, like, I don't know if this is going to be my background for much longer. It's because I have this contemplation of just packing things up and moving completely. And we'll see if that happens. I again, I am trying to figure out, like, what's gonna help me take this next step. And honestly, like, being in an area in Florida that I love and have grown up on and continually go back to, like, to me, that kind of makes sense. And so when we're talking about, these mishaps in life, and we talk about mistakes, and we talk about failure, and we talk about pain and trauma, like, it is okay to give space to how you're feeling and to what your body is going through. Like, you don't need to rush through things. Like, some people are going to take longer than others, and that's okay. But what we need to realize is, at the end of the day, how are we using that to either fuel what's next, or how are we using that to get a better understanding of ourselves, better understanding of the situation, better understanding of whether or not, you can do better, or, maybe it just wasn't on you at all. Like, I think that for me, I get so hung up on what I could have done differently, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. And sometimes we just need to take that as, okay, this opportunity didn't work. Let's go to the next. It's that to quote the late and great Kobe Bryant, that Mamba mentality, that we go next. Like, you don't stop working. Like this happens, and you push through it, you persevere through it. Um, and I know, like I started the beginning of this podcast is like I don't take my advice very well. Um, but I think this is something that I really need to think about for myself is like how do I keep working and keep grinding and keep getting to a point that like yeah, this was something that dropped me some steps, but how do I continue to climb? And I think for those of you that might be struggling out there as well, with your own mental health, or something in your life happened recently that's got you to a place that you're not feeling the greatest, or you're not feeling as confident, or you're whatever that might be. Take that for what it is. Like, process why you're feeling that way. Process and think about like, why are you in this space, and then what are your steps to get out of it? Like, what do we how do we get to this next point? Like, now if my friends were to ask me, I'd be like, I still don't know, to be honest. But this idea of packing and moving is probably like one of the more likely scenarios for me, um, because it is that new start. It is that new step, and sometimes, and the deepest holes, we have to be creative and find our ways out, and that might just be it. And so I know it was a very interesting first episode back to For the Love of Humankind, but I want to give you all kind of an update and of things that have been happening, and just talk about some very real things I think that happen to people every single day. There are plenty of people being laid off and let go from their current positions all across the world, um, and that's okay. Like, well, it's not okay, but it's okay to understand like that can potentially happen. Obviously, in a capitalistic society, that's going to happen, because everything's about money. But how do we take that and move to the next point, right? Um, and so this season is going to be jam packed. We're going to be dropping episodes once a month, um, on the YouTube channel, and back on Spotify and wherever you might be able to listen to this elsewhere. We'll be bringing back guests this season. We've got some really cool topics that we're going to be talking about. And so I thank you for listening to the first episode back of For the Love of Humankind. Just remember that when you hit a road stop, or a roadblock, or road stop, whatever you want to call it, that's not the only way to go. And it's up to you to figure and find yourself a way around that. Whether it's under, around, through, above, whatever that might look like. Just never stop going. Just never stop going, and treat people well. And we will see you in a month's time back here on For the Love of Humankind. Once again, I am Jeff, and thanks for listening.